What happens when a dual-wielding dagger ranger, a warband summoning barbarian, or a great dragon paladin runs into a band of trolls? A battle, of course. And if you were playing D&D or Pathfinder 2e, then you might be fighting for a while. But 13th Age speeds up the fight, and each class uses its unique abilities to bring an end to the trolls. Oh, and that escalation die helps, but more on that in a few minutes. Hey all, welcome back. Today I'm reviewing 13th Age, 2nd edition, a set of books we kickstarted some time ago and just recently arrived. And if you watch our Twitch streams or chat with us in Discord, you know that I'm a bit hyped on it. I'll break down what it is, what I feel works brilliantly, what didn't quite sit right with me, and who should actually play this game. Now, if you're new to 13th Age, here's the quick pitch. It's heroic fantasy, and I do mean heroic. Your characters start at level 1 as already small-time heroes. Yes, I said level 1. All this with D20 DNA while making some bold design choices that change how the game feels at the table. The goal is faster combat, more distinctive characters, and a campaign that feels like the GM and players are co-writing an epic fantasy novel. This review focuses on what actually matters when you sit down to play: character identity, combat pacing, and the game's philosophy around rules flexibility. Let's start with what genuinely excited me. Now here's my favorite thing about this book. The classes don't just look different on paper, they play differently at the table. And I'm not talking about this one has different spells or this one gets sneak attack. No, I mean the actual rhythm of play, the decisions you make, the spotlight moments you create. These feel intentionally designed to be distinct. The book frames its 9 core classes as each having their own advantages and unique playstyle. That matters because plenty of RPGs claim classes are unique and then everyone ends up doing the same tactical loop with different flavor. If your group loves character identity, where the fighter should feel like the fighter and the sorcerer should feel like the sorcerer, this design delivers. Player composition becomes about story and playstyle, not just we need a tank and a healer. This also reduces build anxiety for newer players. You're not competing against a massive universal feat list. Each class already has its own internal identity and strengths baked in. And I'm going to repeat that now. Each class has their own talents, their own feats, and their own skills. There is no overlap. Well, unless you want it. And I'll explain that a little later in the video. Now, there's a trade-off. When classes are this distinct, balance discussions can get louder, but honestly, I'd rather have bold, memorable classes than classes that feel like slightly different equipment loadouts. One small note. If you are a well-seasoned TTRPG player or GM, then some of the things you see in the book might feel similar to other games. It's how things, though, are rolled together that makes them feel different. Now then, coming in at number 2, the escalation die, and it is genius. All right, let me tell you about the escalation die because I love how this mechanic works, and it's different than a lot of things that I've seen in other places. Starting in round 2, the GM sets the die to +1. So you're taking a D6, setting it to +1, and it increases by +1 each round, maxing out at the +6. Players get to add that bonus to their attack rolls. Yes, you get stronger as the fight gets longer. Dun, dun, dun. Now, this does so much with minimal complexity. First, it keeps the combat moving. The book explicitly calls this out as a pacing tool to prevent fights from dragging on. And if you know me, I despise long, drawn-out fights. In Pathfinder 2e, there have been fights that have gone an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it is not something I enjoy. Second, it creates tactical pressure. Some abilities trigger off the escalation die value, and even when they don't, players naturally think in phrases, do we go aggressive now or wait until the bonus climbs higher? So for example, the 7th level wizard spell states, hit. The target loses its next move action. If the escalation die is 3+, it loses its next standard action instead. So do you hold off on using this spell till the escalation die rises, or do you use it on your first turn? Decisions with consequences. Third, and this is huge, the escalation bonus is primarily for players. Monsters and NPCs generally don't get it, except for special cases like dragons. That means combat naturally builds towards a heroic arc, where the party becomes more effective as tension rises. It transforms combat from we hit, they hit, repeat, into an escalating scene with tension and payoff. Many players will love the build-up, and please don't think that characters can act reckless. There's still danger in these fights, but that's for another video. And finally, the game encourages tinkering. This might be my favorite philosophical choice in the book. The game respects the reality that sometimes character choices don't work out. Maybe a spell looked cool but plays boring. Maybe a feat seemed strong but feels dead at the table. Maybe a new player picks something that doesn't actually match how they want to play. Look, I know I've seen it in my Pathfinder 2e games many times. Then it goes further and explicitly gives you permission to tinker towards what works. That tone. What you want is a culture where players can experiment. Mistakes don't ruin campaigns, and adjustments aren't cheating. The book even addresses character concepts that fall between archetypes. Instead of complex multi-classing rules, it suggests borrowing a single talent from another class to capture the vibe, while warning against cheesy min-maxing that harms table fun. And if you played with me, you know I am not a min-maxer. Perfect balance? I'll always appreciate a game that says the table is the final authority and fun is the goal. What I've just given you are the highlights that make me want to run this game. But no system is perfect for everyone, and there are two areas that didn't fully land for me. Let's talk about some dislikes. So let's address the icons, which are my number one dislike. And unfortunately, they're one of 13th Age's signature story mechanics. Icons are the big world-shaping figures and factions that characters have relationships with. I understand the intent, generate story hooks, create player investment, fuel plot on demand. But for me, icons feel loud, maybe too loud. Mechanically, you roll icon dice at the start of story arcs. A 6 gives you a clear advantage, a 5 gives you an advantage with complications. There are alternate approaches like rolling in the moment, and there's even a random icon connection generator with a D12 table, which is cool, but also reinforces how central this layer is to play. Here's my issue. I prefer world building that's a bit more organic. I don't always want a meta framework hovering over the campaign. Icons can be fantastic, but if your table isn't into them, or if your GM style is more grounded and less big mythic forces, you'll constantly feel pulled back to this one specific story engine. And mind you, for some players, that's amazing. For me, it sometimes feels like playing with pre-labeled story magnets that keep snapping into the same shapes. So it's not that the icons are bad. It's that their prominence might not match every table's storytelling style. If you love player-driven narrative, control, and big story switches, you'll probably love icons. But if you prefer subtle faction politics and emergent storytelling, they might feel like a lot. And then let's look at my number 2, which is the living dungeon focus doesn't hook me. The way the game pitches living dungeons, it's a core part of the world. The book describes a setting where living dungeons rip up from the underworld. Very high concept, very mythic spectacle, very metal album cover fantasy. And if it's your jam, sweet, but it's not automatically mine. I enjoy weird fantasy, but I like weirdness as one color on the palette, not necessarily the headline. When a game's pitch leans into a specific kind of spectacle, it shapes player expectations. Suddenly, everyone's imagining dungeon erupts, reality warps, we fight the impossible, which can be awesome, but it makes it harder to run quieter arcs. Mysteries, court intrigue, slow burn horror, grounded travel. Unless you actively push against the default vibe. That said, if you want fantasy that feels cinematic and mythic by default, this is absolutely in the game's favor. It's just not what sells it for me. Before we wrap up, quick shout out to one unique thing mechanic, because it supports something I really appreciate. Characters should feel like the center of the story. The rules frame this as art, not science, sitting between mechanics and narrative. What matters is inventing something unique compared to other PCs and interesting to the player. This won't be everyone's style, but if you like character-driven campaigns where PCs aren't just adventurers but singular weirdos with destiny attached, it's incredibly effective. Here's the bottom line. If you want classes that feel genuinely distinct with purpose-built playstyles, and want combat that ramps intensity and avoids dragging thanks to elegant pacing mechanics, and you want a rules culture that encourages tinkering and adjusting toward fun without drama, then 13th Age is absolutely worth your time. Even if you don't adopt the whole system, there are ideas here worth stealing. On the other hand, if you don't love the idea of icons as major storytelling pillars, where campaign framing ties strongly to this mechanic, or if the living dungeon mythic spectacle emphasis doesn't match the fantasy you want to run, then this might not be your forever system. But even with that, I still think it's a book with concepts worth borrowing. All right, question for you. Do you love the icon system, especially if you've played it before, and because it generates story on demand? Or from what I've described, does it feel like it crowds out your preferred campaign style? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks again, and take care.